Hey there, how is it going? So just ignore this project right here because this is what we're going to be working with. But for now, it's just default. What I want you to focus on is the app right here, which is going to be a quiz app. And that's exactly what I'm going to show you how to create. I'm going to go all the way from the beginning of the process to the end of the process. And this is the final result. It's not a very complicated quiz app, and it's not that pretty either. But I just wanted to focus on giving it a few functionalities that can teach you new things. Watch this right here on the top when I answer a question, because once I answer it, the result will also show up right here. As you can see, there's a message on the bottom right here once you get it right, and then you hit the next question and you just do it again, and if it's okay, it's correct, and then you do it again. Let me just miss one right here, and this is the next now, and we get it wrong. So as you can see, it's not too complicated, but it will also be a great opportunity to learn a few different things about Flutter. And then I'll just keep doing the rest of the quiz. And once we get to the end, which is about 2 questions from now, it's going to be right now. Once we get to the end, you get the final score. And according to the final score, it'll either be a red message saying, better luck next time, or a green message saying, I'll just show you. I'm going to hit restart quiz. Okay, we're back to the end of the quiz, and this time we're going to get a good score. And boom. Now it says, congratulations, your final score is 8. And as you can see, even the text here changes to restart quiz. So I'm going to go ahead and just show you exactly how to accomplish this app that you're looking at right now. Here we are now in the Flutter demo homepage. And I'm just going to go ahead and just delete this whole home class right here. Goodbye. I don't care about any of this either. I'm going to delete this comment. I'm going to put in my own primary color here. And let's begin by creating a new file right here, which we'll call home. It's going to quickly import material.dart and type in stfull to create a stateful widget like that. Call it home. And I'm going to delete this because I'm not going to need it. And then, of course, we come over here and use home. I pressed enter and it imported it right here, as you can see. And this is pretty much it on the main.dart file. The first thing I'm going to do is right below the class, I'm going to put in the questions. And I'm just going to show you how they're organized. It's basically a list of maps. Basically, this is index 0, it's the first question, and then this is index 1, which is question 2, and so on. As you can see, it's right here, question, and then it's a question text. And then you got the potential answers. And as you can see, the correct one always has a bool saying true, and the wrong one say false. And it's right here under the score. And this right here is under the answered text. And by the way, this is just how I decided to do the quiz app. There are a lot of things that you can do differently. This is just an example. Don't take it as a rule or a law. Just use this to learn about Flutter. This is just my own perspective. Who knows if 5 years from now when you're a kick-ass programmer, you would do this completely differently. I'm going to go ahead and just paste this right here, because this isn't about how to make app bars. I'm going to start this out with the center widget. And here I'm just going to put in a column. And the first thing we're going to do is create a row for those little icons on the top here to show up. For now, I'm just going to put in a row, and then as children, I'm just going to put in 2 different icons just so we know it's there. And I'm just going to hit the save button so we see what it looks like so far. And there it is. And now back to the column. As you can see, the row ends right here. I'm going to create a container, and this is going to be where the question will show up. I don't want to waste any time with designing, so I'm just going to paste this right here. And for the child, it's going to be a center widget first, and then a text widget. I'm just going to type in, this is where questions go. I hit save on this, and there it is. But let me just style the text real quick. I'm just going to paste this as well. Hit the save, and now design-wise, it looks exactly like it did in the example. Now, still within the column, don't forget, we're always within this column. I'm going to put in the questions. And this isn't how it's going to end up. This is just so you can visualize what's going on. I'm going to start with an inkwell with child, which will be a container. And of course, the inkwell will have an on-tap property. I'm just going to leave it empty because we need the user to be able to tap on the answer that they want. Once again, I'm just going to paste in the decoration stuff. Right now, the color is null, but we're obviously going to take care of that soon. And then as a child of the container, we're going to have a text widget, and that's going to be the text of the answers. This will be an answer. That's just what I'm going to type in. And to style it, I'm just going to paste this because it's just the font size going bigger. And I'm going to hit save, see how it looks, and that's it. We're going to go ahead and do this 3 times, just so you can see what's going on. But let's avoid confusion by doing this right here. I'm going to put in an elevated button right here. I'm gonna leave the on pressed empty for now. And the child is gonna be just, I'm going to put in some text saying next question, and we'll come back to this in a little bit. Once again, I'm gonna paste the decoration stuff. I'm gonna hit save. And this is pretty much it, except I forgot to put in a size box right here just to give it a little bit of breathing space between the next question button and the answers, like so. And now I'm going to put in that little score indicator so that you know how well you're doing on your quiz. It's a container. I'm going to put in the padding right here. I'm going to type in 0 out of 9. And the style is like this. Hit save. And this is pretty much what it looks like. There's also that little bottom thing saying that the answer is correct or wrong. And I'm going to do that in just a little bit. But for now, let's go ahead and create some variables. So what kind of variables do we need here? First thing I'm going to create is going to be a list to keep track of this little list of icons, which I'm going to go ahead and call score tracker. And this is going to be a list of icons. And what we can do for now is come over here where we put in the icons right here, and we'll put them in here. Now it's empty over there. And a little detail that I might have noticed is that once there's no icons, it goes up. So that's not what we want. When there's no icons, we kind of need that little space just to keep the conformity of the app. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a container and give it a height of 25. Now it looks better. And it could be a size box as well. In fact, I'm even going to change this to a sized box. The thing is, we don't always want this to display. So I'm going to show you a little trick that we can do here on Flutter, which is you can just do if, and in this case, we're going to say scoretracker.length is equal to 0. Only then do we show this. And the cool thing about this little if trick is that this if only applies to the first thing below it. So I can just go ahead and put in a different if here, and we don't need to go, into the if else's or whatever. It's much simpler like this. You don't even need the curly braces. And here we'll just do the opposite logic. If score tracker is bigger than 0, score tracker.length is bigger than 0. In that case, we're going to use the spread operator to represent the score tracker list. And now I'm going to hit save, and it's going to show up right there, because the score tracker length is obviously bigger than 0 because we have two icons right here. So I just wanted you to look at this right now, and I'm going to delete this because this should start out as empty, because when the user opens the app, he hasn't answered any questions yet. I'm going to restart the app, and this is what it's going to look like. Now that that is sorted, the next thing we're going to do is create a variable, which is an int called question index, and it's going to equal 0. And what will this do? The question index will pretty much be how we will choose which question to display. So while it's a 0, it's going to show this question right here. And then once it moves to 1, it shows the next question, and then to 2, the next question, and etc. That's how we're going to control it. So that's why it starts at 0, because the quiz begins at question 0. And then the next variable is going to be total score, which will also start with 0. And this is pretty obvious. It's this score right here. If you get an answer right, you get a +1, and if you don't, you stay the same. So now that we have this variable right here, let's go ahead and give this a real question instead of this dummy text. So instead of this text right here, what should go here? Well, let's go back here and see it's called questions. That's the name of the list. And I'm just going to delete this right here and replace it with questions. And then here you throw in the index number, right? Like 0 or 1. Let's do 0. And let's go back down just so you understand. So we're at index 0 of the questions list. So now we need to specify the question right here. And the way that you do that is very simple. You just take the question and you create another squared brackets, and within strings you put in the question like so. Now if I hit save, the first question is there. And instead of this 0 right here, we're going to go ahead and use the question index, which right now is 0, so nothing will change. But then we'll be able to update this as we go along in the quiz. Obviously, these static answers are not what we need, so let's go ahead and take care of that. So the first thing I'm going to do is just delete these two, and I'm going to go ahead and grab this right here. I'm going to do Control X, and I'm going to create a new Dart file. I'm going to call it answer, singular, just one answer, okay? I'm going to hit the enter button. As always, I'm going to import material.dart, and then I'm going to do stateless, just so it creates a stateless widget, and I'm going to call this answer. Once again, I'm going to remove this because it's not necessary. And instead of this container right here, I'm going to put in the inkwell that we just had over here. Do this, and okay, we're good to go. So right now we could just literally, instead of the inkwell, we could just do answer, hit enter to import. And we could do this, right, and hit the save button, and it would be the same. But instead of that, we're going to do something different. And the reason we're going to do it differently is because we need to iterate through the answers. And there are other ways to do it, but I personally prefer this one. And in my opinion, it's the one that works best here. So Basically, what you would do here is you would do the spread operator, and then questions, which is the list of questions. And once again, the index needs to come here. Right now it's 0, but then it will update. And as I showed you before, we want the answers right here. This is the list. As you can see, the answers equals a list right here. You can tell that by the square brackets. And so we want this list right here. So what we do here to get this list is, just like we did before, we type in answers. And here, Flutter doesn't really understand what you're trying to do. So you need to be more obvious about it. You need to put in space and say as list, and then you specify the type of list, which is a map that has a string and an object. But this still isn't enough, because what we need to do is we need to iterate through this list. That's why Flutter is like, what are you trying to do? So what we need to do here is we use parentheses, and now we're going to iterate through it by using .map, like so. We just do .map, and let me just put in a comma here. And as you can see, the errors are gone. And if you don't know how map works, it's essentially, instead of E, I'm just going to call this answer. And what .map is going to do is it's going to iterate through each of the answers. And each of the answers will be represented right here by the answer variable. And then here you input the logic that you want. Essentially, this is a map function, and what the map function expects is a function as well. So we're returning null right now. Hit save just to make this a little bit organized. Sure, it crashed, but it's okay. Obviously, you can't have a null value. And instead of the null value, you know what I want? I want the answer widget that we just created. I'm gonna hit save now. And now it works again. Of course, we went through all this trouble and we're still in the same stage where all of the answers are the same, but now it's much easier to fix this. So the first thing I'm gonna do is going to be come over here, and we need to create a string variable. I'm gonna call it answer text because, you know, it's the text of the answer. Then let's use the constructor. I'm gonna use named parameters, and of course this dot answer text. And of course I forgot to type in the final. Now we can come over here and use that in the constructor right here, answer text. And let me just put in this comma right here. And this is actually simpler than you would think. Now we're gonna use this answer right here, over here. And as I told you, this represents the iteration of each of these elements. So we're iterating this list right here. So one answer equals this right here, okay? And as I told you before, if you want to get this information right here, you need to come to the key of the information, answer text. So all we gotta do is come over here and do this, like so. Now I'm gonna hit save, and nothing's gonna happen because we actually need to apply this little variable right here, over here. Now I'm gonna hit save, and boom, we already have access to the potential answers to the question. Now let's go ahead and take care of this little null color. We don't want that here. So let's create a variable called answer color. And we're going to do this according to whether the answer is correct or wrong. If it's wrong, it's going to be red. If it's correct, it's going to be green. This answer color, and right here instead of null, we just do answer color. And the logic behind it will be right here. So basically what we need to do is answer color, and we could just do colors.green, right? But then they would all be green, and we don't even want them to have a color before they start, right? But we'll get to that in a bit. So first let's focus on how can we differentiate between red or green. Well, as you can see down here below, there is a score, right? So if it's correct, it's going to be true, and if it's wrong, it's going to be false. So that's pretty easy. As I already taught you, you already know how to do this, right? You take the answer right here, and instead of answer text, we just do score, and now the bool is right here, and all we got to do is use a ternary expression. So if it's true, it's going to be green, and if it's false, it's going to be red. So if you don't know what a ternary expression is, it's pretty much very simply explained. It's just, if this is true, then do this. If this is not true, then do this. So I'm going to hit save, and now as you can see, the correct answer is green and the wrong one is red. But like I said before, we don't want the colors to show before the answer has been selected, right? So we need to create a new variable called, I don't know, answer was selected. And we're going to make it false because obviously it's always false before the user actually selects it. So now that we have this variable right here, we just need to come over here where we were and do another ternary expression within the ternary expression. So just answer was selected and then the question mark. So if this is true, do this, right? And if it's not, then it's null. The color is null. So I'm going to hit save, and now the colors are just going to disappear. So that's another check on the list. The answer color has been taken care of. And we also want to take care of the on tab right here, over here. So let's just go ahead and take care of that right now. Create a variable called answer tab. Sorry about the names, I'm pretty terrible at picking names for variables. Answer tab right here, and just going to grab this right here and put it on the inkwells on tap. And if you don't know what the inkwell is, it's basically just a widget that allows you to get tap functionalities over whatever you wrapped it over. So in this case, our container is now clickable, or rather tappable. But anyway, now we just come over here and do answer tap, and I'm just going to leave it empty for now. And now let's take care of the elevated button right here. So the first thing I'm going to tackle is pretty simple, which is the next question. I don't want it to just say next question because once the quiz ends, I want the text to change to restart quiz. So for that, you guessed it, I'm going to go ahead and create a bool called end of quiz. This will become true once the quiz has reached its end. Pretty self-explanatory. So I just need to come over here to the elevated button and put in the bool once again. And then of course, we're going to use a ternary expression. So if it's false, we want it to say next question. And if it's true, that means the quiz has ended. So we want it to say restart quiz. So that's already taken care of. And the next item on the agenda is, instead of this static string right here, let's go ahead and make this a real string. The first thing we're going to do is put in the current score, which as you remember is called total score, but we want it to be to string. Then we just do this right here. And what should go here? What's the variable that would always say 9? And of course you could keep the 9 because in this case you know it's not going to change, but for a real quiz you should do the following. You just do questions, which is the list, dot length, because there's 9 questions. And now I hit save and it's going to stay exactly the same. Now that things are looking better, let's go ahead and tackle the answer tap, which is, not the simplest part of the quiz, but to be honest, it's not that complicated either. Just follow along and you'll be fine. So for simplicity purposes right here, I'm just going to go ahead and create a method over here, just to keep things simple. I'm going to call it question answered. Why not? After all, when someone taps the answer, the question is being answered. And inside here, we're going to have all of our logic. So the first thing I'm going to do is hit that set state, because we're going to need everything to update, etc. So the first thing we're going to tackle is we need to tell our app that an answer was selected, because this is a pretty important thing, right? In fact, we have the bool right here, answer was selected. It's so important that we've already had to create it. So in this case, because an answer has been tapped, we go ahead and we make answer selected equal to true. That's the obvious first step. Now that this has been decided, the next step is to check if the answer was correct. And how do we do that? Well, we need to access the score of the tapped answer. Can we do that within this method? Not really. So we're going to go ahead and create this right here, which is a bool, and we're just going to call it answer score, just to know if the user picked the right or the incorrect answer. In this case, we're just going to say if answer score is true, well then in that case, let's go ahead and give the total score 1. And you could do this by saying total score plus 1, right? But this is too long. Let's just go with the shortest version, which is the plus plus. So every time you tap the right answer, this equals to incrementing the total score by 1. So if you tap and you get it right, instead of 0, it'll go to 1. And the next thing that we can't forget to do is adding the score tracker on top. So whether it's correct or wrong, you add the corresponding icon on top. This one is pretty simple. You just do score tracker, which is the list of the icons right here, and dot add. And then inside the dot add, you use this bool right here, answer score. And if it's true, in that case, we want to add the green icon. And if it's not true, well then add the red icon. I'm going to hit save. And this is how it looks now, much more organized. And you can see the icons and the colors right here. However, I don't want the user to be tapping answers and then he has to find out for himself that the quiz has ended, right? So we need to make sure that when the user taps the answer to the last question, then we need to do something a little bit different, now don't we? So before the set state ends, let's go ahead and add that part right here. So when the quiz ends. An easy way to check if the quiz ended or not is to use if question index plus 1 equals questions.length. Here you need to remember that questions.length is 9, like it says right here. However, when you go with the index, it's from 0 to 8. So that's why we added the 1. So basically, when the question index plus 1 equals 9, then we know we've reached the end of the quiz. And when that happens, hopefully you remember we created this bool right here to signal that the quiz ended. So we just need to come over here and say that this equals true. That's literally it. And this is almost everything you need to do when it comes to tapping the answers. So let's just go ahead and come to the answer tap right here. I'm going to do enter and I'm going to put this in. And hopefully you remember that the way we know if the answer is correct or not is like this. And like you can see, like we have this parameter right here. And this right here is the parameter we're giving it. It's a bool and it will tell you if the answer is true or false. So let's see what happens. Like if we save, let's see what happens once we tap, okay? As you can see, it registers if it's correct or not because the score increased and also the little icon showed up here. However, we can't go to the next question yet, so this kind of sucks. Let's go ahead and take care of that. And then we'll come back here because there's a little detail I don't want to miss. So right here in the elevated button, we have the onPressed. Once again, to make it simple, let's just use a function and then create it up top. I'm going to create after this one right here. It's a void function because we're not returning anything. And once again, we're going to go ahead and use the set state. And the first thing that comes to my mind is that once you press this button, next question, we need to reset the questions because these colors right here, they need to disappear. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to grab the question index because remember, the question index is what defines which question is being displayed along with the answers. And once again, we're going to give it ++. Just by doing this, if I hit the save button, we can already go on to the next question. However, as you can see, once you go to the next question, it already tells you which one is correct or wrong. And that would make this the worst quiz in the world. So this is definitely not what we want at all. And the way to fix that is we have this bowl right here which says answer was selected, and once you tap the answer it becomes selected, and that's what gives away the color of the answer. So all we really need to do here is make it false again. So now it will already work. If we go to the next question, now we don't give away the answer. However, if we keep on going with the quiz, this is the last question right here. As you can see, it changed to say restart quiz, but if I hit restart quiz, it doesn't restart because we haven't done anything for that to happen. So once again, we need to implement that type of logic right here. Let me just put in the comment that says what happens at the end of the quiz. And here the logic shouldn't be the same as this one because what happens here is you're on index 7 and you tap and you go into index 8. However, once you tap the button right here and the quiz has ended, then you're already at index 8. So when you tap for the next question, you are already incrementing the question index. So that means that once the quiz is at the end and you hit the restart quiz, then the question index will go from 8 to 9, which is exactly what crashes the app because there's no 9 index question, okay? Because there's only 9 questions, so it's 0 to 8. So instead what we say here is if question index is bigger than or equal to, technically just equal to would be enough, but I like to play it safe. And then you just say questions dot length. And now we can put in the logic here. And what goes here? Well, a new function. I'm gonna call it reset quiz, and let's go ahead and create it right now. Let's put it below here, and it's in our void. Now here, once again, we use set state, and what you need to think here is what exactly will make the quiz reset. Well, first of all, the question index will for sure go back to 0 because we need to go back to the first question. Another obvious one is that the total score obviously also goes back to 0. And of course, we can't forget the score tracker, which is a little list of icons on the top, and it goes back to being an empty list. And the final detail is grabbing the end of quiz bool and making it false again, so that our app can know that the quiz is not at the end anymore, and we're back at the start. That's what a reset means, and that's what we're doing right here. So I'm just going to restart the app, just to make sure everything's good, and we're going to test it out for bugs. Here we are, so I'm just going to go ahead and do this. Next question. And did you notice that? That's already a bug. So if I keep tapping it and I tap, like, look at this. This is ridiculous. This is a ridiculous quiz app. And also, because there's no limit, then this happens. So what is going on here? The problem is I'm tapping an answer, and once I've tapped the answer, I can continue to tap the answer. So even if I got an answer wrong, I can just tap on the right answer and boom, I get the score. So we can't have that. Let's go ahead and fix it. We fix it right here where I said we would come back later. So this is the comment right here. If answer was already selected, then nothing happens on tap. That's what we want to make happen right here. And let me just put in this comment here as well. So what we do here is actually pretty simple. We just do an if statement. And I don't know if you remember, but there is a bool called answer was selected. Because as you remember, right here in this function, question answered. Let me show you. It's right here, question answered. Once you tap a question, the answer selected bool becomes true. So that's how we know that the user has already tapped the answer. So if it's true, we don't want anything to happen on tap. And how do we do that? It's actually super simple. You just return. That's it. If answer was selected is true, then once the user taps, nothing happens because you just return. Once you return, afterwards, nothing happens. This does not take into effect. And let me show you that. Let me hit save button. Let me get this right. And I'm tapping the other ones, and as you can see, nothing happens. because we are returning because this is true. And I don't know if you remember, but on the elevated button over here on the next question method, we go ahead and make the answer was selected back to false. So if I tap next question, then I can answer again. So that part has been taken care of. Let's go ahead and keep hunting for bugs. So next question. And okay, so when we tap the answer, it's always correct. And when we reach the end of the quiz, it restarts, right? Okay. However, if I don't tap the answer, what happens if I hit the next question? Oh, apparently you can skip questions. Well, not in this quiz though. I'm not letting you do that. Instead, I'm just going to make a little toast show up if you try to do that. Let's go ahead and take care of that right here in the elevated button. So similar to what we did before, except with the opposite logic, because now we want to know if answer was selected is false. And that's what this means, okay? This right here and this, they're the exact same thing. But I'm going to leave this because it's shorter. So if answer was not selected, then we can't move on to the next question. That's what we're trying to accomplish here. So if we do what we did before, just return, now you can move on to the next question. But I would like to signal something to the user so he understands that they're not allowed to skip to the next question. And I'm going to do that with a little snack bar. So scaffold messenger dot of context dot show snack bar. And let me just put this in right here already. And now let's just put in a snack bar. Very simple one. I'm just going to put in the content really, which is going to be text widget that says, please select an answer before going to the next question. As simple as that. Now I'm going to hit save, and when you try to go to the next question, boom, there it is. Please select an answer before going to the next question. Now there's no doubt. The user will understand for sure, and he'll just tap the answer, and then he can go on to the next question. So now the only thing we have left is to display that little message on the bottom right here for when an answer is correct or incorrect, or at the end of the quiz to show the final result. And the way I'm going to do that is with a container. And by the way, this is still within the column, okay? Everything is happening within that column. The styling is going to be like this, and the color is going to vary according to whether the answer was correct or not. So that means we need a new bool, and it's the last one, which is correct answer selected. This is pretty much just checking if the user got the answer right or wrong. So if he did get it right, correct answer selected, if he did get it right, he's going to get colors.green. And if he gets it wrong, it's going to be colors.red. As a child of the container, we're just going to give it a center widget. And then as a child, it's going to be a text widget. Pretty simple stuff. And I'm just going to paste this right here because it's simpler. I'm going to hit the save button. And it's already showing. And I need to style the text, which is very simple to do. Just like this. Hit the save button. There it is. And of course, it says wrong because the bool starts out as false. But the point here is to just show this container once the answer has been tapped, right? So what we do is use the if statement once again. Answer was selected. If this is true, then display this. If it's not, then don't display it. So if I answer now, I did get the answer right, but it says wrong. Why? Because we haven't used this in the other methods that we have going on. So let's go ahead and go to the method question answered, and we can just come over here, and as it says right here, check if answer was correct. And if it is, the bool correct answer selected becomes true. So if I restart the app, and I hit the right answer, there it is. You got it right. But now I'm going to hit the wrong answer, and it still says, well done, you got it right. And that's because we need to come over here, and once we go to the next question, we need to change this back to false. So now we just restart this, and now it should work just fine. Hit the correct answer, there it is. Hit the wrong answer, there it is. Hit the right answer, and there it is. Now that this has been taken care of, we need to go ahead and fix this mistake that happens at the end. So this is the end of the quiz right here. And the only thing that changes is this button's text. I don't want that to happen. I want this to be gone, to disappear. And I just want the final message to show up. So we don't just need this right here. We need to say answer was selected needs to be true and end of quiz needs to be false. Again, this means false. So this container right here will only show if answer was selected is true and if it's not the end of the quiz. But if it is the end of the quiz, then we want to have our new container. And this one is very simply styled. I hope you don't hold that against me. Its child is once again the center widget, and the center widget's child is the text widget. Let me just style this like this, hit the save button, and as you can see, we're at the end of the quiz still, and there it is, the message. But this isn't what I want, and you can already see that this is the logic we're going to use. So if the total score is more than 4, which means, it's 5, in that case, it's It's going to show us a piece of string that is going to say, congratulations, your final score is, and it says the total score. If, however, it's not bigger than 4, in that case, better luck next time. That's pretty much it. And this pretty much concludes our little quiz. So let's just go ahead and check if everything's working. Maybe I missed something. Let's see. So I'm just going to hit the perfect score, just see what happens. September, Michael Jackson, fried chicken, his tongue, Ecuador, Belgium, the octopus, and Switzerland. And boom, there it is. Congratulations, your final score is 9. Now let's go ahead and have a subpar quiz performance. And I'm actually doing too well right now. And there we go. Your final score is 3. Better luck next time. And restart quiz. Everything's working. If we do this, nothing happens. Wonderful. Happens with both things. Correct or incorrect always works. And if you try to go to the next question, it doesn't let you. It just creates as many snack bars as you tap the next question. So this is pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. I hope this was able to help someone out there. If it helped you at all, I would appreciate if you could like the video. This gave me a little bit of work. And all I'm asking you is a like. And of course, if you want to keep on learning about Flutter, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I appreciate any support. It was a pleasure to create this quiz app with you. Hope you can show it off to your friends. And I hope that you can create many more apps in the future. And of course, the project is going to be in the description. You can check it out on GitHub. Once again, thank you for watching. This is Flutter Mentor, and out.